In order to remain competitive in the market, you have to actually pay people what they deserve, and more importantly, what they're being paid, 15 minutes down the road. I just, I'll go do some math, but I'm worried we're not doing that. And again, in a year that we're trying very hard to comply with Kerwin, which explicitly addresses educator salaries. Okay, I've gone to page 22 of the operating budget book, and I see the employee compensation marker for $25.8 million. Let's say that $25.8 million represents a 1% salary increase for HCPSS employees. What happens if from 2 months from now, or whenever negotiations are concluded or are otherwise, resolved, that the final determination is that, like everyone else we've heard from, those increases should be more in the range of 4 or 5%. I mean, is that linear then? And so, how is that addressed in the future if that's the resolution?
Ms. Walsh, so the budget has to include an appropriation amount, and so the $25.8 million indicates what that amount is. And if the negotiated amount that ultimately is determined, however we get there, is greater than that amount, and we've already adopted the budget, then we would look for pathways in our budget authority that was already approved to be able to make up the difference. If the pathways are not there in the budget authority that's out there, we would then look to whether or not we could do a supplemental appropriation if we had any available unassigned fund balance that could be used to cover it. That happened a couple of years ago, actually, in FY22. If the amount ended up by being something that couldn't be handled within budget maneuvers done within HCPSS, then we would have conversations with the county about how we would go about taking care of that outcome.
What if I have a follow-up, I can keep going? Okay.
Keep going, because I was going to ask probably what you're about to
Okay. Well, I mean, the word collaboration has been used a lot. Who are we collaborating with when we put a marker like this in the proposed budget?
The dollar amount that's in here, and when we talk about collaboration, this is done through our internal planning and our recommendations to the board, and it begins with the superintendent's proposed budget. So that's how this number became established at the $25.8 million.
But the memo that we have from April 25th that went to the board, the announcement jointly with the school system and the Board of Education and the executive, restoring at least funding that equated to certain beloved programming. Have any of those discussions or collaborations reached the subject of why aren't we proposing to increase salaries of our school employees in the same measure that we're increasing everyone else employed by the county?
Compensation increases, Ms. Walsh, are a subject of collective bargaining, and only the parties that are engaged in that collective bargaining can engage in that discussion. And we've stayed within those parameters.
But certainly if you had indication that there was more money to negotiate with, then that would change the character of the negotiations that you're having with the parties to the collective agreement, right?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by more money is available, because we work within what would have been the board's parameters and the board's requested budget. So that is where we get our negotiation parameters from to actually then engage in those negotiations. We don't look at a third party and say, oh, we're going to get X more. We have to work with the amounts that are in what the board has approved and then what's included in the board's requested budget.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is the number that's in today's book, the fiscal year 2025. Ms. Rigby has asked about multi-year planning. We're talking about talking with the administration on the day after this budget passes. You're going to have to address the fact that we're now falling further behind in terms of starting salary for our teachers and how we're going to fund that. I mean, it has to be funded, whether we fund it incrementally starting this year or whether we dig ourselves in a hole this year. It's a conversation that we're, right, hopefully all going to have. I would love to be part of those conversations in June as well. Because it's the biggest bite, right? Black Student Achievement Program, even I was shocked at how relatively low-cost pre-K was. I was like, why haven't we been doing this before? But that the biggest ask is that many employees times whatever the salary increase is. So I don't understand how that's not the first thing that's discussed every time. I mean, you don't start with the smallest things. That's like me. I mean, that's how I clean my house is I organize the silverware drawer first, and that's why it looks like that. But I understand that most people don't do that. I think, hopefully my point has come across, which is I don't even understand with a straight face how we can put this in context with all the rest of the agencies that we're going to be hearing from over the course of the next 2 or 3 work sessions. And again, you've heard, we give you 57,000 of our darlings every day. And we know what good teachers look like and we know what bad teachers look like. And I cannot believe that our utmost concern would be making sure we keep those good teachers we have now and making sure that they know that, we want them there, we want them to be safe. But in the same year that we're announcing X number of cuts and still trying to, save some of them, but we don't know, and now the number's 224, and P.S. now we might be 7th in the state in terms of starting salary. Like, these are terrible messages, not only to send to new recruits, but to our existing teachers. And I just, as much as this collaboration is good, is this our 6th budget? In the 6 years that we've been doing this, I have never seen the educators as bad as I've seen them this year, and that's a low bar. I feel like, that's certainly what the sense that I'm getting is that, who's going to be where, teaching what. Is it what I wanted? Is it with my kids? Is it at the school? And why don't I do something else in Carroll County? And again, it's a terrible place to be in. I would hope that in future discussions we have to start with the biggest bite. And I would hope that even in this year we figure out a way to do better.